Have you ever stopped to think that death as we know it may not be the end? That perhaps our consciousness is much more powerful than we realize? In today's video, we're going to explore an intriguing theory that connects the laws of quantum physics to the idea of immortality. According to this view, consciousness never dies, it just goes on to different branches of the multiverse. And what does this mean for us? Let's find out together, but before we go any further, tell me, have you ever had a moment in your life when you escaped something that seemed fatal? Number 1. The multiverse and Helena Blavatsky's consciousness. Helena. Blavatsky and modern esotericism already hinted more than a century ago at what quantum physics is only beginning to hint at today, with its theories that reality is not a straight line, but a multidimensional fabric, a mutable illusion where consciousness is the true force that defines what exists and what doesn't exist. For Blavatsky, the human being is not simply a physical body destined to perish, but an immortal flame of the whole, a consciousness that transits through planes of existence far beyond the visible. In this theosophical view, the so-called many worlds, interpretation of quantum mechanics would not be a surprise, but a modern confirmation of ancient truths. According to this theory, that of Hugh Everett, there is a certain probability that this or that thing will happen, and when it does, it simply activates a line of reality in which we witness the event while other possibilities unfold in parallel universes where the outcomes are different. You've died countless times, although you don't know it. It's not a metaphor or a mystical fantasy. It's a possibility embedded in the very fabric of reality. Most people think that death is an absolute end, a definitive interruption. But Blavatsky already warned us that what we call death is nothing more than a change of state, a migration of the soul to another plane. If we combine this ancient wisdom with quantum interpretation, we discover something disturbing. You may never experience your own death, because your consciousness, what you really are, will always find a new branch of the universe where it will continue to exist. This is the essence of quantum immortality, and it is also the essence of the path of the soul according to theosophy. Every time you've been on the verge of dying, every time a tragedy has been inches away from reaching you and you haven't, you may have died in another line of the multiverse. But your consciousness, the true observer, made a silent leap to the line, where you survived. In this fractal cosmos, there is no single you but infinite versions of yourself, each following different paths, each unfolding along branches that fork endlessly. Number 2. Quantum physics and the leap in consciousness. Blavatskyan thought has always argued that consciousness was the key to understanding not only destiny, but the very structure of the universe. And now physics is beginning to suggest the same thing, that you are not a victim of chance, but a multidimensional traveler, whose existence cannot be interrupted by something as illusory as death. Helena Blavatsky maintained that consciousness is an eternal and immutable principle which is neither destroyed by death nor limited to a single existence. Her esoteric vision of the human soul as a multidimensional traveler resonates with disturbing precision with the modern idea of quantum immortality. If you've ever had moments when you were on the verge of dying, where a tiny coincidence changed your fate, it may not have been luck or chance. It may have been something much deeper, your consciousness leaping into a version of the universe where you are still alive. From your perspective, life seems continuous, uninterrupted, like a single, straight line. But if Hugh Everett's theory is correct, then in countless other realities you have already died. You have already been mourned, you have already disappeared, and yet here you are alive, in the only timeline you can know, the one in which you survived, in which your consciousness remains active. This raises perplexing but fascinating questions. Is death really an illusion? Is it simply a transition between different branches of the multiverse, a point of divergence between millions? And if it is, how does this change the way we understand our lives, our fears, our decisions, even the purpose of our existence? The implications are gigantic, and as Blavatsky would say, so profound that they can only be approached by those who are prepared to look beyond the veil. Some aspects of this theory are so provocative that they are rarely discussed publicly, as they topple the pillars of modern materialist thinking. but they are there within reach of anyone who dares to look. If quantum immortality is real, then every instant we experience is no more than a fragment within a great fabric. Life is not a straight line, but a single thread within an infinite network. What we call death may just be the point where that thread ends and another begins. But that brings us to an even more disturbing question. If you keep escaping death without realizing it, what happens to all the other versions of you that didn't? Make it where are the yous who died in the other branches? And what happens to the loved ones you lost in this reality? Are they really dead, or simply unreachable to you, living in a reality where you are the one who is missing? These questions not only challenge our understanding of death, but also our relationship with time identity and the continuity of the soul. And this is where Blavatsky once again has a voice, for her consciousness is a flow that goes beyond the physical body, beyond space and time. Quantum immortality, then, is not a modern heresy or science fiction, but a scientific way of naming what the ancients knew, what the initiates understood, what the mystery schools protected. According to this vision, you cannot truly die because you, the consciousness that observes, that chooses, that dreams, will always jump to the next thread where existence will continue. Number 3. The continuity of consciousness and the miracle of life. To explain this more clearly, let's briefly return to quantum mechanics. According to Everett's many worlds interpretation, every decision and every random event creates a branch of the universe. Imagine tossing a coin. In one branch it lands heads, in another tails. Both branches exist, but you only experience one of them. The same applies to life and death. In one branch, you may have fallen off a cliff and died, while in another, a miraculous gust of wind saved you. In the first branch, that you has died, but your consciousness doesn't stop there. It continues along the line where it survives. This is not a hypothetical theory without consequences. Think about the moments when you were on the verge of dying. Perhaps a car passed inches from you. Maybe you didn't get on that flight that crashed. Perhaps a diagnosis arrived in time. In this line of reality, you're still alive, but in others, you're not. According to quantum immortality, you have already died several times, but you, the observer, will never see this death because your consciousness has already made the leap. If your consciousness, the you that experiences this reality right now, simply changes branches every time one ends in death, then what we call life is not a continuous line, but a series of invisible jumps between different realities, all united by that central thread that is you. Every time you survive something that could have been your end, it's not just luck. You are living proof that this phenomenon is happening, even if you don't realize it. Have you ever thought about the continuity of your consciousness and the possible ramifications of life and death? Comment below with your thoughts on the concept of quantum immortality and how it might impact your outlook on life. Number 4. The ramifications of existence and the meaning of life. But while the idea may sound comforting, the possibility of never dying actually leads to deep and unsettling questions. What happens to all the other versions of you that didn't survive in other realities? Your friends, your family, the people who loved you have already mourned your loss, felt the emptiness of your absence, gone on with their lives without you. Those realities, you are what has gone. But here, where your consciousness continues to exist, none of that has happened. You carry on as if nothing had happened. So what do we do with these dead versions of ourselves? Are they really extinct or just out of reach of the consciousness you now inhabit? Are they trapped in branches of the multiverse that you will never experience again? Quantum immortality forces us to consider that death is not necessarily an end, but a transition, one more bifurcation among many possible ones. If your consciousness always jumps to the line where you survive, this means that from your perspective, you are eternal. It means that regardless of the odds, there will always be a way for you to continue existing. But if this is true, what price do you pay for this uninterrupted continuity? If death loses the weight we give it, what does that do to the value of each moment? Where is the meaning of our lives if we know deep down that there will always be another version of us that will continue to exist somewhere in the multiverse? And beyond the personal, the theory forces us to reconsider our losses. When someone dies, we feel pain, we assume it's the end. But what if for that person it was just a leap? What if from their perspective nothing has changed and they continue to live on a line where death has been avoided? This view doesn't erase the suffering of loss, but it does offer a new way of understanding mourning, one based on continuity, not a definitive break. Death becomes a change of direction, not a definitive absence. But of course, there are dark aspects to this. Imagine escaping death again and again, but the branches where you survive become increasingly unlikely. You are saved by centimeters, by seconds, by a twist of fate that defies logic. There comes a point when the lines where you stay alive are so rare and improbable that the world around you begins to seem unrecognizable. You could become the sole survivor of your line, watching everything around you disappear or decompose in a lonely and improbable existence marked by the accumulation of impossible leaps. Quantum immortality, far from being just a consoling theory, confronts us with the notion that death as we conceive it may not exist. If this is true, life can no longer be understood in the same way. It is no longer a race against time or a narrative with a beginning, middle, and end. It becomes something more, a story that never fully ends, an eternal dance of consciousness moving between possibilities. Number 5. The impact of quantum immortality on existence. Understanding the theory of quantum immortality is not only challenging our beliefs about death, but also forcing us to redefine what it means to be alive. Because if there is no final chapter, if there is no last page, the real question becomes, what will we do with the page we are writing now? And what if it's not a curse, but a test? A way of constantly facing ourselves on the edge of the impossible. To remind ourselves that we exist not by chance, but because our consciousness clings to the thread of reality, where we can still go on. This is what the proposal of quantum immortality offers us, the idea that each of us has escaped death countless times without even knowing it. Think of those moments that seemed miraculous, a car that stopped just in time, a missed flight that turned out to be fatal for others, a diagnosis that was made at the last minute. From the outside, they seem like coincidences, extraordinary events that we attribute to luck or fate. But what if it wasn't luck? What if in those moments your consciousness just jumped like an electric spark to a different branch of the multiverse where your story didn't end? In that case, your survival wouldn't just be a fluke, but living proof that quantum immortality is taking place even if you don't realize it. Have you ever had a moment that seemed like a miracle or a coincidence? Comment below on your experiences and how you see the concept of quantum immortality in relation to your life. Number 6. The place of quantum immortality in reality and destiny. This theory also makes us wonder if all those miracles and narrow escapes are actually subtle gaps in the fabric of reality, momentary glimpses of the mechanics of quantum immortality. And if that's the case, then perhaps the real death we all fear and avoid will never happen. It would only be a transition, a doorway that our consciousness never fully crosses. As ancient spiritual traditions have already suggested, perhaps it's not about dying, but about transforming. Perhaps we never cease to exist, we just cease to be accessible to those who still travel through other branches of the universe. And when we look at this, we can realize that our existence, our life, is much more resilient than we imagine. Even the people we think we've lost in our lives may actually be continuing their journey in other versions of the universe. They're not erased, they're just on a line in the multiverse that we don't have access to. This completely transforms the way we view mourning and loss. It's no longer about absence, but about continuity. Life continues in other branches. This perspective helps us deal with grief differently, as it offers a deeper insight into the eternity of consciousness. However, it also forces us to face a dilemma. If death is not final, what does that mean for the time we have and what we do with it? If we know that our consciousness will always find a way forward, then what's stopping us from living with more purpose, more authenticity, more clarity, knowing that we have infinite possibilities before us? Number 7. The enigma of existence and consciousness. Quantum immortality not only challenges our ideas about death, but also leads us to rethink the purpose of life. If death is not a definitive end, but a transition to another line of existence, the real question becomes, what are we doing with the life we are living now? All the times we've been on the verge of dying, All the times we've narrowly escaped are reflections of this imperceptible transition between the branches of the multiverse. With every choice we make, every decision we take, our reality forks into different paths. On one path you may have died, on another you survive. And if fate and survival are a constant, what does that tell us about our daily decisions? What does this mean for our goals, dreams, and fears? This theory brings us face to face with a disturbing truth. Human consciousness is not limited to a single body or existence. We are connected to infinite versions of ourselves in different timelines. Each version of us is a continuity, but at the same time a divergence from the reality we are experiencing now. This leads to a deep reflection on what it really means to exist and how we live each moment in a universe that is both vast and infinite, where nothing is final. Quantum immortality doesn't promise us an eternal existence, but it does challenge us to live more consciously, intentionally, and connected to the true purpose of life. Number 8. The evolution of consciousness and collective impact. When we look at quantum immortality, we are forced to consider that the decisions we make not only affect our lives, but also the infinite versions of ourselves scattered throughout the multiverse. Every choice we make, however simple it may seem, reverberates through different timelines, creating an impact not only on us, but on all other aspects of reality. This realization leads us to a paradigm shift in the way we view our relationships with others. If we are all connected, if all our actions affect the infinite web of possibilities, what does this mean for humanity as a whole? Perhaps true evolution is not just individual, but collective. By realizing that our lives are not separate, but interconnected in a vast multiverse of consciousness, we are challenged to act in a more compassionate and collaborative way. The theory of quantum immortality gives us the opportunity to rethink our priorities, our values, and our responsibility in the grand scheme of existence. Perhaps instead of seeking external validation or accumulating wealth, we should focus on building a legacy of evolution and collaboration. Quantum immortality, with all its complexity, takes us on a journey of collective awakening, where the quest for knowledge and mutual growth becomes the true guiding force. Now that we've explored quantum immortality and its impact on our view of life and death, the big question is, what will you do with this knowledge? If death is not the end, how does this change the way we live? Quantum immortality challenges us to live with more purpose and to question reality in a profound way. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, like and share this video so that more people awaken to this new perspective. The real awakening begins now.